civilizations than just Atlantis.
I know. We just don't know any of them.
True.
Can you, I know this is difficult, give me a number of the number of civilizations that survived and died? I mean, it grew up and died on the earth. It doesn't have to be exact, ballpark number.
Oh, but there's been probably at least a dozen, maybe more.
Oh.
Not all of which were as advanced as Atlantis. Some were more advanced.
It's a lot less than I thought. I thought we'd like 1,000.
Well, when you consider that the Earth itself had to evolve. As a planet, it wasn't always conducive to the growth of civilization.
Yes. I understand that based on some history I've read and listened to.
But some of these advanced civilizations were influenced by either other concurrent civilizations and or extraterrestrials, as you call them. Terra meaning Earth. But there have been many visitations by other non-human species, shall we say. And some of them, most of them were more or less hands-off. But some of them did get involved. Some of them actually had their own pocket civilizations concurrently with some of the human civilizations. I mean, it's, well, okay. And all the possibilities and probabilities thereof. That's a good way to finish it up.
So are there still an alien enclave on Earth at this time?
Not such as you're thinking, and not like a separate civilization. But there are groups of certain types of aliens living and working and surviving.
Do they look like us?
Some of them do. Others have the mental capacity to make everybody think that they look.
Excellent.
Like, you know, they disguise themselves.
Yes, using...
By, she said telepathy. Well, that'll work. Yeah, that's a Bashar term.
Yep.
By using telepathy out and around them so nobody sees anything different. And they're not harming anyone.
What other type of non-earthlings have you come across?
Quite a few. I haven't counted, but let's see.
Can you give me their names while you're going? Okay, that's fine.
Not at this time.
Yeah, we're not ready yet from what I understand.
No, but you're getting close.
Yeah, I know. Sarah and I believe, are ready, but the rest of the world.
Yeah. And even you two will be sort of taken aback and astonished and then excited, probably in that order.
Yeah, I know. We will be. I've been rehearsing this thing in my head almost every day for the last year or two. First contact, what's it going to be like? Woohoo! Anyhow, you were saying, you were thinking, counting.
Thinking, counting, thoughts going around in a little whirlwind. Why should I count?
I'm just curious.
Let me put it this way. Those that are more than likely to make physical first contact in a relatively close period of time.
Meaning soon?
Yeah, but soon is relative.
I know, so is what you said.
Yeah. There's probably 3 at first. And then after they've paved the way, there will be multitudes of others.
Do you have names for those first 3?
The ones that you call the small grays, the tall grays. Oh. I expect the Pleiadians will be the first ones. They look most like you humans, except that they're very tall. They're beautiful beings. People might even think they're angels at first, but no wings. Even angels don't really have wings.
So is that because they're higher energy?
They
look bright?
Well, yeah, that's part of it. Okay. Yes, yes. Her hands are still very cold.
Here.
Can you do both hands?
Oh, only have one hand, so.
Really?
Well,
what happened to the other one?
The other one's busy.
Okay. Where were we?
You were talking about the Pleiadians being the first ones to visit.
But it's because they're so familiar already with humankind. And over the
that makes sense.
millennia, they've made many contacts. And they still do on a smaller scale and have been for a while. And so many people already are familiar with them and would welcome them with open arms, which would obviously assist in the other ones coming around. The short grays are a little nervous.
Yeah, I think of them more as pesky little critters.
Well, they can be. But they're aware that most Earthlings consider them not so friendly. They are friendly.
Okay.
But they've had a history of being kind of intrusive, invasive, maybe.
Well, from what I've read and understood and what Bashar has told us, they had no social skills.
That's a good way of putting it, yes.
That is why they behaved the way they did.
Yeah.
But their social skills are improving.
Yes, they're learning. And they want to learn. And so that's an exciting prospect too. So they'll be a little more cautious, but respect begets respect, and they will show shy respect to those they come in contact with, and those people will learn to respect them, and it'll grow from there.
And what about the tall grays? You had mentioned them too.
Yeah.
Because I've listened to some people in Gaia said that they've been visiting for a while.
Yes, they have. Many times in conjunction with the short grays, because they would work together.
Oh.
The tall grays are more, let's say, scientific, and in that respect, a little more logical in their approach.
Okay.
But they're not pushy about it.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
That makes lots of sense. It's actually the way a person should be. The way I consider it.
Logical and not pushy. Huh.
Yes.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
There are so many people on this earth that are not that way.
There are so...
Those are the ones I worry about during first contact.
There will most likely be panic and riotous behavior.
Yes.
But that will be quickly quelled because the vast majority of authoritarian type figures will make it be known loudly that, hey, this is not acceptable. We are welcoming are, oh, how will they put it?
Brothers from space. That's what
Well,
I was thinking.
I was thinking more like brothers from other realms.
There you go. That'll work too. So will Sarah and I both be alive to see full acceptance of aliens? I know it's difficult because it's a future event. The probabilities are
Probabilities are there.
good, bad, or fair.
Are good.
Okay. So in other worlds that have bipeds, bipedal forms, do they have fingerprints?
Some of them do. Some of them use other forms of differentiation. And now you're going to wonder what those are. Believe it or not, there are nose prints. Some of them just skip right to the whole retinal or iris thing, such as their retinas or irises are. Some of them use their feet. Just whatever the beings collectively wanted to choose and do.
We've heard in some other videos that there are civilizations that are cat people.
If you want to call them that, yeah.
Have you visited any of those planets?
I haven't, but I know whereof you speak. They are just like the reptilians, quote unquote. There are traits that resemble these reptiles or felines. And so human beings would call them by those names. But you could look around at your own humanity and see such variety. You could call people by animal names. It's just frowned upon in your society overall. But think of the ancient gods were oftentimes given animal characteristics. That's because that's what they represented to the people who ended up making artwork about them or whatever. That's what they looked like. Bird people, alligator people, elephant people. What are some of the other ones? Well, definitely snakes and other reptiles. So, yeah, it's not a hard, fast rule that cat people have whiskers and ears and nose prints, although they are one of the beings that uses nose prints.
That's what I was thinking.
Tails, claws. They might have some of those characteristics, or, well, okay, because you want to know all this stuff. There are so-called cat people who do have claws and tails, and they use them. The tails are prehensile, let's say, because they can utilize them as they do their claws, but yet their claws are sheathed and retracted very deeply because they have they don't have little paws. They have fingers, as you would call them, so that they can grasp. They have opposable thumbs so they can grasp things. And part of their whole grooming is to keep them sharp because you never know when you might need them sharp. And they come in handy to open cans. They're that tough that they can, just...
So I take it they have cans?
Yeah, they don't quite look like yours, but yeah, they work metal, and they've come up with cans and jars very similar to what you have, because they can work glass, they can work a whole myriad of... They have quite the metal minerals, that's the word I was looking for. And so, yeah, they can do a lot that is very similar to what you've done here on Earth. They take it a little farther, perhaps, because they're better quality materials. They work them better. I hope that recorded because I was saying it a little. I don't want your human fellows to think that I think they're inferior.
Oh, no.
But no, the felines, as you would call them, they don't have whiskers, by the way.
They don't? Or
No, they do not have whiskers. They're more apt to have actual eyebrows above their eyes. Interesting.
Do they have a cat-like face?
You could call it that, yeah.
Are they
yeah.
furry?
And yes, they are furry.
Do they wear clothes on their fur?
More for ornament than necessity. And they, especially for ceremonies, and, they get all caught up in that.
Pomp and circumstance?
Yeah. Anyway, yes, they are better at working the minerals, better at metallurgy. And so when they make something, especially if they're mass producing something, it's usually at a higher, what I would call a higher quality than what you produce here on Earth. However, that doesn't mean that there won't come a time when humanity has better grasp of metallurgy and processing and better use of the minerals that you have, so you end up with higher quality materials to put your cereal in and stuff.
So, what type of world is their world? Do you know?
It's lush.
Yeah?
They have not felt the need to build buildings, even for processing. Well, they go underground for their factories that, work the metals, make the glass, produce those things. But they do have agriculture as well, and so a lot, believe it or not, they do grow specific grains that do digest properly, not like your little earth cats are almost completely, especially if they're wild, they're purely protein based. But these beings that you're asking about have developed enough to where they get much of the nutrients that they need from not so much fruits, but from grains, mostly grains and grasses, some of which are eaten raw and some of which are processed into something else. But they have learned how to properly utilize their world to give them the nutrition they need to do what they want to do.
Is there any greed on that planet?
There has been, and there might still be some vestiges of greed, but a lot of that has been pretty much, shall we say, clawed out of their populace.
Okay. What's their health industry like? Do they have one?
Other than agriculture, no, not really.
So if they get sick, do they get sick?
If they do, they have an innate ability to find what they need to cure themselves.
Oh. Okay.
Or if it's incurable, they know they're going to die and they go off and they curl up and they die. Okay. It's no big deal. It's not like humanity is like, oh no, I can't die, I don't want to die. Oh. And you have to go through all these ceremonies to bury the body or whatever. Mm-hmm. And no, they're more attuned to their world and what is natural.
Do they have a government?
More like localized governments, just because if there's a community, it's just easier to have someone answerable, to whatever. And I'm pretty sure they're elected, or they take turns somehow, so you don't get one person thinking he's got all this power like you have here on Earth. They pretty much cooperate. Although I know that your felines here on Earth rarely have, they're loners for the most part. Even let me see something about feral cats, colonies of feral cats here on Earth. That is more or less for, it's mutual cooperation for protection more than anything else.
Yeah. Japan has a cat island. All that's on it are feral and homeless cats. And people visit.
Well,
The island is theirs.
sounds like fun for the cats
And for the people
and for the
that visit.
people. I don't think feral cats would like it a whole lot.
Well, they eventually come around because they notice that, this guy's getting better food than I am. I better go get some food. And you'll see them scurry up and grab food right away.
So they figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's better than the alternative elsewhere.
Yeah. So what type of transportation do they have?
Feet. They walk everywhere. Or run if they're in a hurry. And they will run on all four.
How fast do they run in relationship to our world? If you can make that judgment.
Let's see. Yeah, it's a little difficult. They are rather large, so when they run on all fours, they can go pretty fast. I'm not sure how that would translate. Some of your wild cats might be able to keep up with them for a little while anyway. They just have tremendous stamina.
Okay.
If they need to get to a certain point at a certain time, yeah, they can pour it on. But that doesn't happen very often.
Okay. So their society is more laid back than stressful.
Yeah, definitely what you would call laid back. Not like your cats here on Earth.
No,
That
they're stressed.
they get stressed easily.
So how many live on this world of theirs?
There you go with the numbers again.
Yeah, just a ballpark figure.
Well, it's nowhere near 8 billion, that's for sure.
Very good.
It might be 8 million.
Wow, that's much more manageable.
Yeah. And their planet is very grateful.
How big is their planet compared to Gaia?
Oh, more along the lines. I was thinking Jupiter, but I saw Saturn in my head.
A big planet.
So,
huh?
yeah, it's fairly large.
So they have high gravity too.
Yeah, I guess that's one reason they're so big. So that they can deal with it and they can run fast, even in that gravity. That if this poor fellow was there,
Yeah.
he'd be squished.
We couldn't survive there. We couldn't even visit there.
No.
Okay, cool.
Oh, they do have a couple moons, so maybe the moons are closer
okay.
to, I think they're closer to Mars size.
Do they travel intergalactically? Do they have the capabilities?
They have no desire to develop those capabilities. Although they've been visited by intergalactic or interstellar peoples, so they're aware that that's a possibility and that there's, beings out there that do that, and so they're not surprised if they get visited by someone they hadn't met before.
Like we are in this world because powers that be don't want them to know it.
Yeah. But they don't have that kind of mentality.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe someday your people or someone, some human being, will be able to go and visit with them.
Are they in this galaxy?
Yeah.
In the same dimension we are in?
They kind of straddle two dimensions. This one, very similar to yours, and another one that, don't ask me to describe it. It wouldn't be, oh, maybe that's one reason they are as mellow as they are. They're aware of alternate dimensions. They're aware that some beings, most beings, are in one or this one or that one, or, only a single one. And so they are more tolerant of those poor beings who don't know that they could be in more than one at a time. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Can you give me a hint as to where in our galaxy? Because galaxy is huge.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's 50,000 light years across.
But quite a few space traveling beings, as you would call them, have traveled to other distant star systems. They figured out how to do that relatively quickly. Not quite the same way that Bashar's people have.
Mm-hmm.
But some of them are close or along those same lines. It's all in how you think, basically. As you like to say, it's all up here.
It is.
And so, yes, it is possible to traverse the galaxy because there are beings who do that frequently. But I'm not aware of any that go to other galaxies. Okay, somebody is saying, yeah, it happens, but it's not that
That's a long
common.
trip.
Yeah.
Next time we will discuss dog species. If we have the time. A world where
I know what you're getting at, and I'll have to kind of hunt that one up. I'm not familiar with a canine type species of bipedal, primarily, sentient beings.
Yep, someone is, so you will be in a moment or two.
Okay.
Okay. Talk to you next time.
Yes.
On
Yeah.
another question similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say we are a species on a different planet, totally different physical makeup, and we inherently have a higher frequency, like the Pleiadians, for example. Do they still get people visiting them as you visit Sara? The same process? And if so, it'd be higher up beings, would it not?
Yeah, but they don't need to use this same process of physically channeling through a Pleiadian being. They can actually just communicate as they must, however they must, if they feel that they must.
So they're quite high energy-wise.
The Pleiadians, most of them are. And of course it can vary from being to being.
Yes.
And the, shall we say, spirit being that wants to communicate through them is usually one that can easily mesh their frequencies and communicate.
Okay. That wasn't the question. That just came about from what you were saying.
Oh, okay.
Does a creature known as Bigfoot on Earth actually exist?
Yep.
And can the species cross-dimensionally travel? there are some theories that it has the ability to leave this world and go to another world,
Well, to another dimension.
another dimension.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true also?
Yeah, that is true.
So when was Bigfoot first became Bigfoot? In other words, how did it become Bigfoot? Was it a genetic engineering program, or was it some of the original apes that you talked about earlier? Is there progression, or?
Well, they originated on a different world in the next dimension or the parallel dimension.
Okay.
And they evolved. They're still evolving, but in many ways they are more evolved than Homo sapiens. Simply, first of all, because they can easily change dimensions. Either way it'll work.
Okay. So why do they come to the Earth?
Because they're curious. Curious about you guys.
Yeah. What is their other world like?
Not too vastly different. Mostly it's forested because they respect the forest and the forest respects them. And there's rocks and trees and rivers and streams and seeds from the trees and grasses and small animals. They're pretty much the largest animal, you could say, on their world. They don't have predatory animals that go after them. But then neither do they prey on smaller ones than themselves.
So is there another biped species on that planet?
Mm-mm.
So they
Just
are
them.
the top of the chain, so to speak.
Yeah, so to speak, yes.
Okay.
That's as far as that world is going to evolve, period.
Oh,
Although they do the same thing where they're co-creating their world. But they're aware of what they're doing. And so they're more careful
okay.
with what they do. And sometimes they even make parties, so to speak, out of it. They get together and they discuss. And how are things going? Yeah, we like it the way it is. Okay, majority rules. All right, we'll just leave it alone at that.
Do they have egos also?
To a degree, but they're not as demanding as human egos.
I was thinking conniving.
Oh, that's a good description. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that information. How many other ET species have visited Earth?
Oh,
I'm not asking for names at this time.
there are probably a couple hundred in your
Cool.
way of reckoning.
That is since the beginning of the Earth, huh?
Yeah.
So did any of them visit whenever the Earth was still forming?
Some did.
Cool.
And some have been here off and on over the millennia, others over centuries. Others came once and left.
Okay.
Even more recently, there have been those who have visited and then left. It just depends on their own agenda.
Okay. At least one other psychic / channeler has stated that the moon is a control center for this part of the galaxy. And it's hollow, and there are races living inside of it.
What's your take on that?
No. The moon is the moon. There's no alien bases on there to observe the Earth. There might have been at one time, but no longer. And it's not a control center for whatever. No. That's far-fetched.
Okay. How many ET species are not surrounding, but in Earth's orbit at this time? Can you sense that?
There's a handful.
So it's 6, a dozen?
A handful. Because it varies. Remember, everything happens now.
Right.
The vast majority of, as you call ET, extraterrestrial beings who visit this planet for whatever reasons, and they have a variety of reasons, and there can be a whole bunch of one kind or just one of several kinds, and they pop in and out because most of them know that time doesn't exist. That's how they manage to. They're physical, so they need ships, quote unquote. They need something to travel together in. But they don't worry about how long it takes, because it doesn't. They know the quantum physics that allows them to travel. It's such a mystery to your scientists how they do that. They don't need propulsion because they understand how the universe works. And they go with that flow. So, yeah, there can be, at any one moment, there can be a number of different ETs or a whole bunch of one type of ET. Just depends on what they're observing. There are quite a few who are attempting to assist humanity to raise, or at least enough of you to raise your frequencies in order to go to the next level, so to speak. And they're looking forward to that.
In a previous session, you said you'd look into to see if there are any canine people on any worlds. Have you done that research? And if so, is there?
Just like there are feline appearing beings, there are reptilians of different kinds, there are light beings, there are blue beings, there are multipedal beings. So yes, there are what you could term canine appearing beings. But they're not dogs, they're not cats, they're not dragons or alligators or anything like that. They just seem to appear that way to you humans. There. How's that? But in other sun systems or star systems, they might have the equivalent of DNA, but it is not measurable or, as human DNA or plant DNA or anything. It's the people there had to come up with some other, and they did, another way of measuring and naming and delineating and all of that.
So I guess the real question is, can those two types coexist on one world?
Why not?
Just curious, that's all.
I mean, if there is an agreement amongst those folks, or those beings of any stripe, agree to coexist, then they will. But I think you're also thinking of, in the universe, you realize that your corporeal existence was co-created by all other human beings.
All other entities, you mean?
All other human beings. The universe was co-created by all beings. That's why there's such variety in the universe.
Okay. Because that was a question I had. I really didn't know how to ask.
Well,
So thank
in
you.
another way, I know that there are hybrids on your planet. The beings that have produced these hybrids took DNA from a human being and whatever they call it from their being, and they had to experiment a lot until they were able to tweak them where they came together and created the hybrids. Some species it's easier than others.
So in other words, they're doing cloning of a sorts. I say with a smile on my face.
If you want to call it that.
Tomato, huh?
Sort of, kind of. If they wanted to clone, and there are species who have, they just take their own DNA and clone themselves. But to mix it with another physiology is a scientific endeavor with the goal of producing hybrids that could not only survive but thrive on Earth. Nowhere else, just on Earth. And so that's a little different than just cloning. They have their own version.
Oh, you never told me the own version of DNA.
I believe I have.
Thank you. Now that answered the question.
Yes. They have building blocks, so to speak.
Okay.
But they're different from humans because they are different from humans.
Okay.
Okay. Just had to find the right words, huh?
I was trying to determine if everything has an instruction set for building or repairing a body. That's what I was trying to find out.
Okay, then ask that. Because,
I didn't know that until just now.
Yeah. Yeah, yes, everything, everywhere, if it has any physicality at all, it has its own set of instructions.
Okay. Does Bigfoot have DNA? Yes or no?
I think it's a mix.
Okay.
And not because they were cloned or whatever from somewhere else. It was the evolution on your planet, and they went into a different dimension because they didn't like something. What was it? Oh, they didn't like the fact that the planet was evolving, changing, and they wanted to stay the way they were, which they pretty much have. And so they went into the other dimension, and their DNA that they started with, whether they know it or not, evolved to be different. So that's what I meant by a mix. It's not really alien, but it's not human DNA anymore either.
Okay. So this dimension they bounce in and out of with us, they go into, is that physically in this universe the same location as Earth is, but only a different frequency? What I'm trying to find out is whenever they go to the other dimension, do they have to travel from point A to point B, or do they just change their frequency and still remain on the same physical Earth, just in a different dimension, different reality?
Well, it's not the same physical Earth because it's in a different dimension.
The same they visit the
But
same location.
Yeah, they can pop in and out. They don't have to
go to a certain place and find a portal, say, and then, oh, I'm going to go back home, or no, I'm going to show Junior what this is like. And they like to pop over to see what humans are doing, basically what they've been doing to nature. And then they go back to their own dimension and are like, boy, am I glad we're not there anymore. Pretty
First
much.
of all, they wouldn't be here anymore. They'd been dead.
Probably, yeah.
Some people claim there is an ET and Bigfoot connection. Is there?
There could be, because Bigfoot is more aware of what y'all call ETs and are more accepting of them, have never been afraid of them. They're not afraid of very much unless there's a human being pointing a shotgun at them. Then they know it's time to pop back home. But that doesn't happen often because they're not usually in the view of human beings long enough for that to happen. But anyway, back to your question.
You're answering multiple questions, by the way.
Okay, but yeah, they and various other universal beings, I should say galaxy beings, have been interacting practically since day one.
Interacting with Earth.
Interacting with Bigfoot.
Oh.
Bigfoot and other
Entities.
galactic beings. Yeah.
So then, does Bigfoot visit them, or do the other entities visit Bigfoot?
Other entities visit Bigfoot. It's just easier for them. Bigfoot can pop in and out of this earthly realm because that was their origin point.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And besides which, they don't really want to go anywhere else. They're quite content where they are.
Yeah.
Oh, there's something in her eye here. Ugh. And not just her finger either. Yeah, it all
I'm
went
reading.
right past you.
It did, and I heard it, but I didn't want to. Now I don't know what I was thinking. You do it to me too, see?
Good. A little bit of your own medicine.
Yeah. In a previous session, you mentioned that ETs visit based on their own agendas.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any understanding as to what those agendas are? Do they need approval from Gaia to visit? Do they need approval from you guys to visit? Do they need approval from anyone in your realm before they visit?
In a manner of speaking, yeah, because humanity is not ready to give any sort of approval or permission. Close. And there's that number again. There are more and more people who are looking forward to it. With caution, because the vast majority of beings who visit Earth don't really need permission from Gaia. She's fine. But most of them are members. You are aware of the Galactic Federation kind of a thing. And most of them are members. And so they're all they share information. They're all kind of just trying to help humanity along so that they can visit in person, physically. And they also try to keep an eye on the ones who maybe aren't quite as benevolent, shall we say. It's not that
You mean the ETs are not?
the ETs that are not
Okay.
benevolent, but they are not necessarily harmful unless humans who meet them expect them to be. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So caution is the key word for humanity meeting extraterrestrials. The vast majority of them are friendly. They want to help. They've been helping in a lot of ways. They want to support, and they want Earth to rise to the frequency that Earth can join, humanity can join the Galactic Federation, whatever you want to call it. But individuals and your leadership, because heaven knows your world leadership gets all tied into knots about the weirdest things. But the rest of you, individually, just do your what does that say? Do your due diligence. Know who it is. And go with your gut a lot of times. If you get a bad feeling from an individual ET, then maybe that's not the one you need to be speaking with. Maybe you need to look somebody else up. And all of that will come out when first contact, quote unquote, is made. And there will be ETs who will tell you the same thing. Be cautious, and we'll help. Any questions, come to us, we'll help you. So just remember that caution. But on other worlds, it's more like, okay, we're going to experience something. Okay, we're done. They talk about whatever. Sometimes they don't, because they don't need to. They're telepathic. And then they say, okay, let's do this. So they pop in and out. Because if there's no linear time, they can do it all now. I know, that's trite, but true.
I'm stumbling on something, but I'll come back to that later. Can you tell us what the crystal is that was used in Bashar's ship? How it was constructed and how to grow those crystals?
No,
That's the answer.
that was for his people.
Yeah. Oh, so it wouldn't work for us?
It might not. If your scientists ever figure out how to utilize a similar form of propulsion, and knowing where humanity is right at this point in your linear time, they have not and will not for centuries figure that out of themselves. Hence, first contact.
Okay.
Quote unquote, calling it first contact for the vast majority of
Yes,
humanity.
but it's been continuous contact.
Mm-hmm. No, their crystal probably wouldn't work. It's a different dimension and a different world where the crystal was formed when the world was formed. And of course, their people then had centuries to come to this point.
Yeah.
But it's a different world, different physical world than the physical Earth.
Yes.
And so it would not be the same anyway.
Bashar had said, if I remember correctly, they are roughly 3,000 years ahead of us, technologically.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Why are you laughing?
The next question is the one I did not read before I said it. I'll read it and then we'll just move on because I don't know what it is. Do you have any details on the genders of visiting you to eat cheese?
To eat cheese?
Yep. Voice to text does not work well sometimes.
Well, anyway, And don't concern yourself with gender.
No, I don't.
You know that in spirit, gender is not a necessity or even a consideration. Energy does not particularly have gender. That
No.
was something created for your Earth and consequent other Earths and other planets. There are genders.
Are there always two genders, or are there more?
Most of the time, there's only two, but there are occasions when it requires three, which is interesting. And
Is there one with four?
I am not sure about that, but I think the possibility exists. So there more than likely is one with four.
Haysha keeps watching you.
Hi, Haysha. He thinks it's weird,
Yeah.
but he knows I'm here.
Are there other planets like us that's protected by Galactic Federation?
There are many degrees of physical worlds that are, as you say, protected or assisted or observed. There are many such worlds, and I won't give you a number.
Rats.
And there are many degrees of where they are in their development. Hence, more non-physical beings, or even physical ETs or ETs, as you call
That's
it.
part of what I meant.
Probably. So there's variations on that theme as well.
Is first contact happening at this time because of what SpaceX is doing?
Not specifically, but we are definitely, I say we, SpaceX is being very closely observed and watched.
Of how the pyramids were built. Perhaps. That was the only reason for the question.
I understand. We understand. They keep correcting me. The answer is something you already know. At least with those rock walls you're talking about.
You're
Structures.
reading my mind, huh?
No, you are aware that the melding of those tremendous stones with no mortar, and they are so finely fitted that yes, there was sound involved because that, I say that group of, when we say that group of people, it was a rather large group, not just a handful of people, already recognized the consciousness of sound waves, the consciousness of the rocks, the consciousness of each and every one who was involved. And they figured out how to achieve this. Now, the pyramids are something else. Sound was involved. But so were some, shall we say, assistance. There was some assistance. By these so-called gods. And by the way, the pyramids were not built to be tombs per se. They were used as such after a period of your time. But that wasn't their original purpose in being constructed. As your history went on in your linear time, the original purpose was forgotten. And that's when they started using them as tombs. That's why there aren't a whole lot of royal mummies in there, in any of them.
What was the original purpose? Is that something you can elaborate on?
The gods.
Are these gods or extraterrestrials?
Extraterrestrials. At first, they recognized that the indigenous peoples there thought of them as gods, so they behaved that way. But again, they started losing that focus, that consideration of the peoples. Again, over long periods of your linear time. But in the beginning, yes, they helped, they assisted in the building of the pyramids because the people wanted to honor them as their gods, and it served the extraterrestrials' purpose in teaching them, in going into the mathematics of how they were constructed and what they could be used for, and the power generated that could be sent all over the globe and was utilized by many different peoples who also thought these original extraterrestrials were gods, different parts of the world. But like I said, things started to go south quickly. Boy, she's a stickler, isn't she?
That's what I put up with on a daily basis. How old is the Sphinx compared to the pyramids?
Again, with the linear time.
Yeah, were they constructed the same time?
No.
Okay. Which one, literally time-wise, was constructed first?
The Sphinx went first.
Based on linear time, how old is the Sphinx?
About twice as old as the pyramids, maybe more.
Who built the Sphinx?
The Sphinx was constructed by a mix of other extraterrestrials who recognized that the indigenous peoples needed an outlet for what those people understood as who the extraterrestrials were. Not quite gods, but godlike. And the peoples there were fewer of them then, wanted to, like I say, acknowledge the benevolence of those ETs. Extraterrestrials is too hard to say too many times in a sentence. So I will use your shortened version. But was more, and the Sphinx was an homage to these other ETs. But those ETs didn't stick around for thousands of years. They had other places to go, people to meet, things to do. Consequently, the concept of the Sphinx was, the original concept was forgotten by the succeeding generations of those people. Well, that's basically the answer to your question. I suppose it was it being the Sphinx itself. The reason for its being was forgotten, as I said. Yes, I'm going to continue saying I. There's only one physical being here. Sometimes they can get argumentative.
Yeah.
Yes, you. Anyway, where was I? Oh. And even became a source of controversy and antipathy? Is that the right word? Arguments between groups of these peoples, to the point where there was a group of them, right as I think it might have even been the first, no, not the first pharaoh, but as the population grew and the recognition that there were higher beings, and much of the, not just technology, but the mathematics, the astronomy that the original ETs had, the second group of ETs that was thought of as gods,
Okay.
and who assisted in the construction of the pyramids. These lessons in physics and mathematics and astronomy and even geology, though all of that, as time went on, generation after generation, remembered less and less after the so-called gods left. And we're mingling with this, well, I shouldn't say mingling, because by then, this earlier existence of Egyptians, peoples, indigenous peoples in that area, had, yes, there were various factions, shall we say, various groups. And it's difficult to say this in simple terms, but eventually there was enough fear left. Well, not left. Fear had accumulated to the point where there was infighting amongst these, to you, ancient peoples. And there was a group of them destroyed the visage of the Sphinx, feeling they believed that it represented wrong thinking, that it represented shall we say, an age gone past. It represented the so-called the god, like, the assistants, the ETs that were thought of as gods. There were enough of them that believed that they were false gods, and so they didn't want anything there.
You mean they did not want the image that was
that
on
was
the
present.
face?
Yes, the face that was on the Sphinx originally.
Okay.
The your historians believe that it was the first or the early pharaohs who were against that visage and had it destroyed. They might have encouraged that sort of thinking and let the people rise up and cause destruction. So, in a way, I guess you could say they did. Your historians aren't that far off the truth. But as your archaeologists and other historical experts explore more of the pyramids and the Sphinx, that's going to take a while in your linear way of thinking. But eventually you'll get many, many more precise answers from what is learned from the pyramids and the Sphinx. Let's try.
What was the original face of the Sphinx?
It was the interpretation of what the peoples saw when they looked at the ETs that were assisting them. And it varied because, as you know, individual humans perceive things differently. So it took some time for an agreement to be reached on how to present that visage. And it still wasn't a perfect expression of the visage because just like you humans, you all have face, head, hopefully hair sometimes, eyes, nose, mouth, ears, chin most of the time. Each ET, whoever visited with or instructed or had anything to do with those early peoples, their visage actually varied as much as humanity's.
Oh, okay.
And so that's why there were so many. They finally agreed on a small enough group of talented sculptors who were able to plan what they wanted the visage to look like. And then they created it. And about the same time as when those particular ETs bid adieu to those people. So it was even more important to them to have a representation.